If you're into music gear like I am, I'm sure you are well familiar with this pedal, the Boss CE-1 Chorus Ensemble, originally released in 1976. Every time I post about these, whether it's in one of the flash flood videos or on my Instagram story, it always garners a bunch of attention, and for good reason. This is the first chorus pedal ever made, and they really got it right the first time around. These pedals are now extremely sought after and often demand over $1,000 on the used market, which understandably is pretty out of reach for a lot of people. But what if I told you the exact circuit from this pedal is actually hiding inside of an amplifier that was released just a year before that now sells for less than the pedal? The entire amplifier with this circuit in it goes for less than the CE-1, and that is the Roland Jazz Chorus line of amps. In 1975, a year before the CE-1 would be released, Roland released a pretty revolutionary series of amplifiers, the Roland Jazz Chorus series. They originally had the JC-60 and JC-120. The JC-60 is a 112, that's 60 watts, and the JC-120 is 120 watts with 212s. As the name would imply, these have a built-in bucket-brigade chorus effect, which just so happens to be the exact same circuit as the ever sought after CE-1. As well as the chorus and vibrato, this amp also features reverb and pretty tasteful distortion for being a solid state amp. For those of you who are curious, we are miking the amp up directly with a Neumann U87 and a Shure SM57. You're actually hearing way more of the 57 than the U87. That kind of gets more of what we actually want, and the U87 is just filling in the gaps. Those two mics are going into a Focusrite ISA2 preamp, and then for the room mics, we are using two Neumann TLM 103s. I think pushing the distortion about halfway up is a nice sweet spot, and it's quite tasteful. These amps are noisy on clean, so adding a bunch of gain makes them even noisier. It's no surprise for Roland to release an amp with some cool effects built in and then them to do a Boss version of one of those effects a year later. So why is this so interesting? As I previously mentioned, it's pretty common to see the CE-1 pedals demand over $1,000 in the used market. So you'd expect an amplifier, including the circuit, to go for way more. They're just as vintage, and they have literally all the components and everything that comes along with an entire guitar amplifier. Somehow, the way the used market has worked, you can actually find original versions of the Jazz Chorus from the 70s and 80s for well under the $1,000 price point that these pedals demand. I think there's a lot of understandable reasons for this. These amps are solid state, and it's not common to see amps that aren't tube amps maintain and appreciate in value. I'm sure there's some examples out there, of course, but I think that plays a huge role. The JC-120 in particular is also quite bulky, and many bulky amps just don't demand as high a prices as you might expect, given their smaller market. The best example that I can think of with this is the Fender Super Reverb amps. It's well known that they sound incredible, but hauling around a heavy 4x10 amp is a huge turnoff for many players when compared to something like a deluxe reverb. Another really relevant factor is how great the newer versions of this amp are. Roland is still manufacturing the JC-120, JC-40, and JC-22, and all of these stay very true to their original vintage designs. Well, there's definitely a cool factor and historical significance to owning one of the original versions. I can't say that functionally these are any better than the new ones are. So if you find a new one, there's nothing wrong with going that route. It's no secret that these amps have been used by many great artists since their inception, from bands like The Cure, The Smiths, and Slowdive to newer bands like Turnover. The influence of the JC-120 and CE-1 on genres like post-punk, dream rock, shoegaze, and indie rock cannot be overstated. Even if these aren't super collectible by today's standards, I still think they're really cool, and gear like this is stuff I really enjoy highlighting on this channel. So I'm 26, and I know for a lot of people in my age group, myself included, for a while, kind of assumed that vintage gear is just completely unattainable. After seeing so many listings for 50s and 60s Gibsons demand 5 figures or more, it gets pretty easy to just start assuming like I'm never gonna own any of this stuff, but that's not always the case. I think there's a lot of great vintage gear out there that maybe isn't super cheap, but sells for a comparable price to quality new gear, such as the JC-120, and that's a really great category to look at. At the end of the day, whatever gear inspires you to play is the right gear for you, whatever that is. So I want to know down below in the comments who out there is using these Roland Jazz Chorus amps or Boss chorus pedals, and what are some artists that you guys enjoy that are using them? I always enjoy reading your guys' stories in the comments. I want to do more videos like this in the future, so let me know down below in the comments what some of your guys' favorite hidden gems are within vintage gear. I know there's so much good stuff out there that maybe isn't super expensive or collectible, but definitely is worth the time to talk about it. So if you're into stuff like that, we would love if you considered subscribing. Also, please hit the notification bell so you guys don't miss any videos. That way you'll know when we have new stuff come out and you won't miss any of the fun. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate you hanging out with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. We will see you guys in another video soon. Bye.